Hi everyone, Emily here, and thanks for joining us on today's episode of Seat of Power. Today I'm here with digital publishing powerhouse, Phillip Picardi.
Power and powerhouse. I'm intimidated already.
It's true. I mean, your title is pretty impressive. So let's see. Let's get this. Digital director of Teen Vogue and Allure, and then of course Chief Content Officer at THEM.
Yes,
right?
That's correct. Yes.
So I think that counts for powerhouse.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
This fall, you were named to the 30 Under 30 list. Congratulations.
Thanks. It's the first time that my dad has ever been impressed with me, so I really appreciate it.
So I was going to bring that tweet up. I saw that. So his dad, what did you tweet?
I forget what I tweeted. He literally texted me and was like, wow, I actually saw that you were in Forbes. That's actually a pretty big deal. Like, as though everything else I've been doing in my career is not a big deal.
Right.
And he was like, that one I actually care about. And I said, thanks, Dad. Thank you for your support.
That's something.
Yes.
Well, it's amazing because you're only 26 and you've accomplished so much. So from someone who I'm still starting out my career, and people who are watching this might be too, how have you gotten to where you are so quickly?
There's so many factors to success that I think are important. The first is that I was able to accelerate at Condé Nast fairly quickly because I actually have been working for this company more or less since I was 18 years old. So I started off as an intern here when I was a freshman in college, and then I stayed. So I kind of knew a lot of people within the building. I had a lot of visibility and had just kind of made really authentic relationships with editors here. And so when I came back to the company to be an assistant, I was pretty quickly considered for a promotion. And then Amy Astley, at that point, the editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue, when I initially left my digital beauty editor position at Teen Vogue, I remember her saying to me, this is home for you, and I'll call you in 6 months, you'll come home. Because essentially, that was my second time at Teen Vogue, and I was only 22.
Right.
I think that there are two things that happen from that story. One is I've worked for the company for a while, and I've stayed loyal to a company rather than bouncing around a lot, even though I did bounce around. But two, I had a mentor who was looking out for me and who always kept me in mind. And that's really important, to treat your mentors well, and not treat mentors as though they have something to give you, but rather that you have something to prove to them. And then the final thing that I always tell young people is that when you apply for a job, there's going to be a bulleted list of things that you might have to do, or a description of your job, right? You should always bite off more than you can chew. And you should never be thinking just of what your to-do list is or your responsibilities are. You should always think about what your responsibilities are to your organization. It's not enough for us, especially in a modern climate, it's not enough for us to just make our lives or our work better. We have to be thinking more responsibly of the people around us and how we can impact positive change. And I think, and I hope, that I have been a contributing factor for some of those things at Condé Nast. And I do attribute some of that kind of wider view and bigger picture view to my career trajectory.
Presumably, Teen Vogue specifically has changed a little bit in the years that you've been here, and especially in recent years. And I know that the publication has started covering politics. And can you talk a little bit about your role in that change and what you think it's done for the publication?
Sure. So I went to NYU and I studied the philosophy of beauty at Gallatin. I always wanted to be a fashion and beauty writer. And my professional goal when I was in college was to be a beauty director by the age of 30. I was set on it. I was like, by 30, I'm going to be a beauty director and it's going to be great. And then I went to Refinery 29. I was working under Mickey Halpin, who's another one of my editors. And we were running a story, or I was tasked with running a story about cultural appropriation in cornrows. And I didn't know the phrase cultural appropriation, and I didn't know where cornrows originated from. So I checked out all these books, like Encyclopedia of Hair, these beauty dictionaries. I started talking to Michaela Angela Davis, the woman who actually got a natural hair certification for this, as a license for the state of New York for hairdressers. And it became this reported piece, and it was my first time where I actually felt like I'm doing reporting that's not off of a press release, because as beauty writers and fashion writers, we often kind of are a part of a system. And I felt really good about the piece. And Mickey kind of pulled me aside and was like, this is the kind of stuff that moves the needle forward and that will resonate with people. And she was right. So we worked really closely together on similar features that kind of deliberately pushed the boundaries. And it was because of her encouragement to behave that way that I realized that there was a broader cultural moment happening that many traditional women's magazines were completely ignoring. So when Amy called me, and Condé Nast HR was really the people who called me and said, we want you to be considered for this digital editorial director position at Teen Vogue, I was 23. And so I essentially was asked, how do you take the website from 2 million to 10 million unique visitors a month? And that was like a joke. It was like a hypothetical pie in the sky idea.
Right.
And I said, the answer is really simple. We're going to give her more. And we're going to make Teen Vogue a resource for young women, not just a resource for what to wear or what to put on their faces or how to do their hair, but a resource for how they're going to live their lives and succeed in the world. And so naturally, that meant the first thing I did was actually launch our wellness vertical. So we started a sexual health column. It was called, at the time, Love Your Lady Parts. We normally, like now we would never run something so gendered about sex, but that was what it was called at the time. It won an award from Planned Parenthood 3 months after its launch. We also then started covering the Black Lives Matter protest, specifically around Freddie Gray in Baltimore. And as a brand, I felt it was important for us to not be afraid to say the words Black Lives Matter. And I've said this time and time again, but the editor-in-chief and me agreed, this is not a political statement or a bias statement. This is a human statement, and we should be comfortable making human statements that advocate for our readers and for the people.
But did you get pushback on that?
Of course we did. But being afraid of pushback, if you are not causing conversation, you're not doing anything that's worthy right now. And for our audience, we need to challenge maybe the ways that they were brought up, or maybe the systems that they're not necessarily cognizant of growing up in and contributing to. And it's our job to bring them a collective kind of consciousness of the world around them. That doesn't mean that we always get it right, but it means that we certainly have to try. And so I wanted to create a staff that was reflective of the kinds of things that I wanted to kind of implement here at Teen Vogue. So my first order of business was kind of reorganizing the staff, and I deliberately hired people from not women's magazines, so Wall Street Journal, Gawker, Vice, bringing in people who didn't have a real reverence for the Lady Mag formula, so that we could kind of blow things up and restart. Yeah.
Definitely. So I want to talk a little bit about them, and tell me a little bit about the origin of this, and for anybody who doesn't know what it is, actually give us a little explainer, and then we can go from there.
Sure. THEM is basically what we're calling a community platform, and it is actually the first independent brand launch that Condé Nast has done in 14 years. And so THEM represents the queer community at large. And I would say we specifically kind of create content that doesn't fit a more mainstream narrative of what it means to be LGBTQ. So we try to prioritize voices that aren't as heard in our community. And so we have an excellent team of editors. Meredith Toulousan is our executive editor. Tyler Ford is our editor. And between the two of them, Michael Kuby and our community team, we're not only fielding submissions from our audience, so people can submit pieces, photographs, poems, essays, which we love kind of reading and filtering through to hear from our audience. We're also posting like bios on Instagram rather than just using it as a regurgitation of on-site content. And we're also creating longer form video. So longer form to us means like 12 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
oh my.
Yeah, exactly. So we are creating kind of more like shorts and docu shorts that are exposing different stories in the community. For our immediate launch, we did a great piece actually called How to Raise a Child, where we had trans kids interview their parents about raising them. That was a really beautiful piece. And then of course we did a great drag queen video. So, it's a nice kind of mix.
So being the first, digital publication of its kind or community, is there a lot of pressure for you leading this?
Yeah, I guess I would correct that by saying we're not the first digital publication of our kind or community, right? There are plenty of existing brands and brands that were existing before us. I think that, where we saw a kind of specialty, or we kind of saw an opportunity, was specifically with young people. And we wanted to cater more of our content in that direction. And that really comes from what I learned from Teen Vogue, that young people don't look at gender as a binary, and young people, more and more young people are identifying as queer, right? So I definitely saw an opportunity to engage with them in a way that was making sense for their real lives, but also that, was elevated and beautiful and sophisticated and smart, just like I feel Teen Vogue is.
I follow your Twitter account, and I've seen you interact with young people or people who know who you are because of the work that you've done with these publications, and it's really kind of cool to see people who you may not know, but who have heard of you, looking up to you and learning from you. So how do you feel, kind of as becoming this name in digital publishing, like as a mentor for people you haven't met before? It's kind of a big responsibility.
Yeah, that's always been a part of the territory at Teen Vogue. We always took and every editor who really has worked at Teen Vogue has, for the most part, taken the time to meet with young people or to talk with young people, and to make sure that we were reaching out and hearing what they thought we should be covering and what they thought we should be doing. So we've always tried to approach our kind of creation of our brand and the editorial that we produce as a two-way street. And that's not typical of most magazine environments, right, where magazines want to be the experts or the authorities. So it's really important for me to hear people out and listen to people and kind of what kinds of content they want. Many of our readers openly challenge me and the other editors who work here on Twitter, and I want to make sure that those people know, especially if they're thoughtful critiques. I especially want them to know that they're heard, and it's a part of the process. I think if you want young people to show up for you, you have to show up for them. And speaking of them, that's especially true when you're creating content for marginalized communities. And so for the queer community, the LGBTQ community is vast, and there are many intersectionalities to keep in mind here. And so we can't get it right all of the time. We can certainly do our best, but that always means that we have to allow for dialogue and criticism, and that we can't really shy away from that. We have to be willing to acknowledge it.
How can men better elevate women in the workplace?
Totally. So I think if you are in a meeting, right, and you're a man in a meeting and there are many women in the meeting, or maybe there's one woman in a meeting, you would do well to look at how the fellow men in that meeting respond to you when you speak versus how they respond to a woman when she speaks. Or you would do well to take notice of how often women actually do speak up in meetings or feel comfortable speaking up in meetings. A lot of culture can change by closing your mouth, right? Choosing to not speak can also be very powerful, especially for men. Choosing to listen, choosing to deliberately ask people if they have anything to add to the conversation can really help. I think otherwise, delegation for me has been really key and important. Micromanaging people never empowers them, and being the one who has to make all of the decisions also can kind of limit people's sense of agency and the impact that they can make on a broader level at a company. So empowering the people who work for you, especially if that is a woman in that role for you as a manager, if you're empowering her to make her own decisions and be her own manager and have her own direct reports, you're giving her more space, agency, and freedom to be a leader. And deferring to her, leadership and respecting her in meetings sets a tone for the rest of the people in your company.
So this series is called Seat of Power, and I'm interested in talking to people about, kind of if they're elevated in their career and if they're becoming known in their industry, like how they want to channel and use that power. So how would you like your, legacy to be built, even though you're so young and have so much left to give?
I'm still thinking about that a lot. A lot of this happened really fast. And if you told me I would be here 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I never would have believed it in my wildest dreams. If you would have told me that we'd be lighting up the Freedom Tower in rainbow colors to celebrate a queer brand at the most exclusive publishing house in the world, I never would have believed it. If you told me I would have made the Forbes 30 under 30, I never would have believed it. So a lot of this stuff has been a dream come true, and I think this year and much of the past couple of weeks have spent being more introspective and thinking about how I can take a step back from the day-to-day to think more about the bigger picture. I would say my immediate goals for this year, and kind of with the whatever hypothetical influence I may wield, is to be doing the best I can to pass the mic and give credit to the people on my teams, especially, and people in the industry who may be overlooked or may not be looked at first. And especially now that I'm becoming a representation of them, I want to make sure that my staff at them is as much a part of that story and that storytelling as I am. It's my job, especially as a man right now in media, to be passing the mic more and more.
Absolutely. Is there something in 2018 that you're most looking forward to?
Yes, there is, and I wish I could tell you what it was, but let's just say we have some big events planned that I am really, really excited about for both brands.
Fantastic. Well,
Yes.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.